And so I saw this podcast clip, and I don't know again the name of the show, but the thrust of the clip is that there are men and women in a room, and the women say, or the woman who's speaking on camera says, well, I asked him, did he go to lunch with Adam or such and such, Adam and Tony? And he goes, neither, knowing that I want him to say who he went to lunch with. And then the guys chime in really emphatically, like, but that's not what you asked. You didn't ask who I went to lunch with. You asked if I went to lunch with Adam and Tony, and I said neither. And I think that then kind of explodes into this discussion and conversation about like, so why don't women say what they want to, and then why men got to be slick? So I wanted to get your take, because I know you saw that clip. I definitely saw that clip. This sort of discussion. So I wanted to understand, like, who should be asking what in that situation, and whose side do you fall on with this one?
So I side with the man, because you need to be asking the question that you want the answer to. And here's the problem with both of them. I think she's immature. She's very childish. Yes. And she wasn't asking the direct question, and she was just looking to pick a fight, right? But at the same time, he also knows who he's dating, right? So he knows what her triggers are. He knows how she will respond to certain things. He knew that would be a fight moment in that case. Right. So you either just directly ask her to ask the question, which is probably going to result into a fight, or I suppose you just acquiesce and just kind of just give the person what they want. But again, that's kind of like just giving it. Like, I think what he tried to do is he tried to correct bad behavior by trying to make her be more direct.
Exactly, like emulating the behavior he wanted, but knowing that the person you're with is not gonna, she's not on that.
They're not there. She's not emotionally mature enough to just, not be passive aggressive about it, and not to just pick a fight about something that just is just so unnecessary. I just don't get it. So I don't like that he did it that way. Obviously, she has some work to do herself. If everything has to be something that's so contentious, like, why couldn't you just ask the question? Like, why do you even care? Like, I don't know. Like, I don't care about stuff like that. I'm not gonna ask nobody, who did you go to lunch with? If you decide to tell me you went to lunch today, you went with so-and-so, then that's something that you bring up in the conversation. But I don't care what he's like.
I mean, you know what? I think it really depends on your relationship. So I'll say this. I in this debate, I side with no one. Like, although I endorse for my relationship standards to include direct address, and I don't deal well with passive aggression. I'm like, okay, let's just be. I take that to, let's be aggressive. Like, if it's passive aggressive, I'm gonna respond to it and greet that with aggressive, which doesn't do the right things, right? That's not harmonious, right? That's not cooperative. No. So I think that what it comes down to is, are we having a good faith discussion that is undergirded by trust? If we're having a good faith discussion, which is, I define as, I don't mean you harm and you don't mean me harm, right? So if you're asking who I went to lunch with, and the context of our relationship is, I don't be telling you stuff. And that upsets you. If you are asking me that in that context, and I then choose to omit who I went to lunch with, that is, I feel like, an act of aggression as well. Like, the omission can be an act of aggression, right?
That's why I said he didn't need to do it that way either, because he was, again, you're trying to correct her behavior, and she's not stupid, she's just immature.
Right. Yeah. And I think a lot would be solved, and this is, I'm going to go into a little bit of like therapy speak. The main thing here is, name the feeling before you ask the question. And that is a strategy that a lot of couples therapists will use to make sure that things don't escalate into fights because of hidden feelings underneath the question. So if she named the feeling and said, hey, you know what, I'm feeling really unsure, or I'm feeling really confused about how you've been moving lately. So can you tell me, like, who you went to lunch with? Because it would give me a sense of assurance. Or if he were to say, when you ask me that question, I kind of get like a little defensive because I don't think it really matters. who I went to lunch with. So it's like name the feeling so that you avoid this kind of explosive, like, well, you should have asked it like that, or you shouldn't even care where I'm
Right.
at. Like, just let's talk about what the issue is, right? Because that's the passive aggression, right? Is that there's a whole other feeling, a whole other set of circumstances that went into you even asking that question and that go into that exchange after it. And I feel like neither party or parties in that case, because there's multiple couples in that room, they're not acknowledging that, hey, this comes with context. So if you have a very trusting relationship and you're like, hey, did you go see Adam and Tony? No, I ain't see them. And you have a trusting relationship and none of that is material to what happens in your relationship.
Whatever goes in
that exchange ends right there. You know what I'm saying? But if you have a relationship that is untrusting and that there are gaps in information that's causing this uncertainty with people, then it might be like, hey, I think it's relevant where you were because I don't know if you are always honest with me.
But if you have a relationship that's untrusting and there's gaps and things like that, why do you have a relationship?
Well, hey, look, you gotta learn somehow. You gotta learn somehow. You know what I'm saying? Like I've been tossed out a few relationships because I was like I wasn't at lunch with nobody. I was at home. I didn't eat lunch. I don't eat. I'll say whatever. You know what I'm saying? There was a point where I would really say literally whatever. Like,
oh my God.
Like who's you at lunch with? I don't eat. I stopped eating. I'm on a diet. Like
that's
I
just
would say
reckless nonsense.
Crazy shit. And I've been in relationships with people who also were like, oh yeah, like I was in a yoga class and came back with like wine on their breath and like, you know what I'm saying, getting texts from the other boo. So I think it just depends on the, like you said, the maturity level, right?
For sure.
And then also the style of relationship you have. I think one of the things that kind of bothered me about the clip is like, there's this thing called, because I actually don't think monogamy is bad. I think what works for you no matter what.
I don't think that whatever works. Like I literally I'm just on that.
But there is toxic monogamy. And I think toxic monogamy has, just like it has passive aggression, it has all these unspoken and unwritten rules. Right? Like, okay, you can only be out with your homegirls for so long. Or don't be out with your boys.
Or you can no longer have friends of the opposite sex.
Or you can't have friends of the opposite sex, right? Like just crazy, like these unspoken rules that unfortunately on social media, people will with their whole chest defend these kinds of completely nutso rules for people. And I'm like, how did we get here?
Or I'm not even like a check-in type. Like I don't need the good mornings. I don't need like like that's just not like I speak with purpose, you know, so I don't need the formalities and the hey, what's going on? Like don't text me like sweet nothings.
You don't like your grand rising? You don't like your
grand rising queens. No, not a grand rising queen. Get out of my actually, you know, it's so funny because if you grand rising queen me, I literally just will not respond.
Yo, I honestly though, like I saw a post the other day that just like it really hit me where it hurt, but it's like if you stop sending me memes, it's over. Like if the relationship has gotten to the point where we can no longer send each other funny memes or like, or if it's been like days, like let's say that, you know, we have a good rapport, we communicate, blah, blah, blah. But it's like the memes are what shows me like we're in a positive space. And if it's been days, weeks since you sent me memes and it's like radio silence, no replies, I'm like, okay, so this one's over. Like this is
I can agree with that. Yeah, because memes are just very lighthearted. It's just goofy. It doesn't require conversation. It's just like, hey, have a laugh. You know, I've got group chats where literally all we do is send memes all day.
Exactly, right? It's just
we don't get. I don't know what. Yeah, I don't know what their day-to-days consist of. They don't know what my day-to-days consist of. None of us really care, but we care about each other. But the parameters of the relationship are such that we're not here like dumping our emotional, you know, issues or whatever, or our pain. We're not even talking about like what we have for breakfast. It's just like me. But these are people that are very valuable and important to me.
Oh, absolutely. I think the one thing that really bothered me too, to get back to that podcast discussion, the anonymous podcast, is it felt like when I read the replies that women were like, oh no, of course. Like, of course you should answer the phantom question. Like it seemed like so many women were taking up for that point of view. And I don't know. I think regardless of gender, I would think that was absurd.
I think that's absurd regardless of gender. And I just think it just promotes poor behaviors.
Right.
Like like what are we even saying? Like how, how fragile are we, or what are we used to? Like what kind of, like, it's very unfortunate because that's a reaction to, I guess, certain kind of abuses that people are used to. If you're even
Yeah.
if you're even normalizing something like that, like why are
Yeah.
you kind of like giving your partner like the rundown on some, like, yo, like, tell me what you did today, who was with, okay, good, just making sure, because like what,
Right.
if
Right.
it's all that, like what are we even doing and why are we doing it?
Right. Right. I don't think there's really, I don't think that can be sustained over
No,
time.
not yeah, that's very hard to live with. I don't think those kinds of behaviors, like if you're that insecure, that's not something that gets corrected overnight, and
No.
that's certainly not something that I could deal with as my new kind of normal. Like that
No.
just would not work for me.
But what's crazy is when you have the gallery of girlfriends who are gonna back up that behavior, and then the thousands of social media accounts who are gonna back up that behavior. Like that is the part of it that I really don't understand, and on both sides too. Like I said, I'm not siding with the guy here. I'm not siding with the
Hmm.
woman. I think they're deeply flawed things about each of their approaches, but it
Hmm.
seems like almost like people were fighting tooth and nail for their
Hmm.
gender in that exchange. And I was just like, boys, I don't know if this is one to be proud of. That he's like, well, I'm gonna be literal, like letter of the law. Like
Yeah,
you didn't
yeah.
ask me what
Because he
time.
knew how she was going to react to that. That was
Right,
my problem with that. Hmm.
right. And I also like, again, operate in good faith. You know you're a woman, you know your
Hmm.
partner. If you know there are things that upset her, don't do things that upset her. You know what I'm saying? Like don't
Facts.
don't compromise yourself. Don't compromise who you are. You don't
Hmm.
necessarily have to, but don't do things to intentionally upset her, like stonewalling on an answer that you could very easily give, assuming there's
Hmm.
no, like things going on that you don't want to report about that you wouldn't be proud of.
I think to your point, like, that's a great point. Like, it kind of goes back to like some of the stuff that we talked about in the past, like in terms of like this idea of like winning. So like, there's
Mm-hmm.
definitely like opportunities where it's like, let's just give the person what they want. Let's just get out
Yes.
of this. But there has to be a point where sometimes you're just kind of like, okay, whatever. Listen, I went to lunch with Jerry. All right, like that's just what
Yeah.
it was, and they let it go. But then you start to see that like it becomes like a person like that is looking for an issue. They
Yes.
probably have the kind of personality where they're looking for some level of chaos on some level, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
it's just going to keep escalating from there. First it was lunch, now it's dinner, now it's like a 3 a.m. phone call. Where are you at? It's like, dude, I was in bed sleep. Where would I be?
But here's the thing. I think it's like the Kim and Kanye thing we talked about, where some relationships underneath the surface level, they want that drama. They
That's
they
exactly.
thrive. Like that's
No,
the
you're
passion and the romance for some people is the dysfunction,
yeah,
is
that's true.
finding ways to kind of like trick each other and compete and win. And like that ends up being what a lot of couples are and not even consciously knowing that.
Yeah, I mean, and I've talked to friends who like go through phones and like go
Mm,
through phones to cuss out people and
mm,
call the girls and the text messages and all that. And it's just like, why are you so invested in that
right,
aspect of it as opposed to just like being invested in your own happiness? Like, if this is
right.
what this person's doing to you and it's a violation of the agreement, then either, since you're agreeing to it, then either be non-monogamous
Right.
or leave.
And also there's some truths that shouldn't be told, right? Like so
Hmm.
that's another thing that's happening for clout on social media, which is like the proud I'm exposing going through phones. Like why are you proud of that? Like that's not a behavior. That's not like, oh look, I'm Columbo now, like I'm CSI, I did it. Like I don't think
No.
that's something that you want to start celebrating in relationship life and relationship world. And I don't know, I think it there things get a little screwy when people default just defend their gender's behaviors,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
there are some behaviors across the board, especially with toxic monogamy, that are wrong, that don't promote harmony, that don't promote
Hmm.
that good faith kind of discussion and cooperation.